Gurudev, and thank you for joining us today. Today again we have with us an art expert and an officer of the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan. Today we are going to discuss about this Maha satsang which was held at the Jigni village at the Prince Academy school, where in Jigni village Gurudev had adopted a school and the village and the temple itself of a Devi. So let's begin our discussion. So describe the atmosphere when Gurudev arrived in Jigni village at Prince Academy. Jagadev, and thank you for joining us today. So, the moment Gurudev entered Jigni village, it felt as though the air itself paused to witness grace. The villagers, students, teachers, and devotees stood in devotion not only with folded hands but with uplifted hearts. The welcome speech echoed a sentiment intrinsic to rural India, warm, reverential, and egalitarian. When the speaker said this Anekal soil became sacred when Gurudev placed his lotus feet upon it, it wasn't poetic exaggeration, it was emotional truth. Spiritual presence is measured not by the loudness of drums but the silence of connection. There were traditional chants, garlands, and heartfelt slogans, but the deeper transformation was internal. Teachers noted that children who were usually restless became unusually calm. Elders later said that the energy resembled temple vibrations rather than a school gathering. Gurudev carries the ability to convert any location into a sacred meeting point. For art of living practitioners, this is a familiar phenomena. We call it Guru Tattva field coherence, where people naturally synchronize into peace when the master is near. The school ground had become a human mantra. Now, from our perspective, the atmosphere was not only devotional but culturally rooted. The welcome respected the Kannada identity, highlighting that spirituality should elevate culture, not replace it. When dignitaries like Nagendra ji and community heads attend alongside villagers, it showcases the Sanatan integration Gurudev represents, where divinity meets social responsibility. For us at VDS, such openings are important because the spiritual adoption of temples, practices, or sacred spaces isn't about ownership, it's about stewardship. The energy was similar to Prana Pratishtha Utsav enthusiasm, where divine acknowledgement empowers the community. This arrival symbolized a handover of responsibility of the youth to protect land, language, and traditions. Now, what does adopting a temple spiritually and socially signify? Like the temple adoption is not a simple act of patronage, it is an act of dharmic inheritance. Many rural temples suffer from neglect, not due to lack of devotion, but a lack of a structure. When Gurudev adopts a temple, he does not claim it, he resuscitates it, he revives its rituals, ensures cleanliness, encourages community participation, and restores a Vedic rhythm. This community begins seeing the temple again as a center of for cultural metabolism. BDS views it as a dharma rakshan seva, where temples become hubs for collective samskaras. It also means rural empowerment. Local youth, women, and elders take part in renovation, puja, awareness drives, and protecting local ecology. A temple is a mirror of civilization. When its flame dims, the identity dims. Adoption rekindles that flame. Now, spiritually, adoption means extending energetic responsibility. Gurudev connects sacred geography back to consciousness. A temple is not only stone and gopura, it's a vortex of collective aspiration. Gurudev brings Sudarshan Kriya, pranayama, and meditation knowledge to such places. When people meditate, their reverence becomes proactive. They don't pray instead of acting, they pray before acting. And action becomes meditation in motion. Socially, it aligns perfectly with the VDS Agni based homas and art of living meditation based prana work. It creates a bridge between ritual fire outside and inner fire within. At Jigni, the school children pledge to serve the temple that indicates successful adoption, not by the Guru but by the next generation. Now, why did Gurudev emphasize land, language, and water during a spiritual address? Gurudev doesn't fragment spirituality and society. For him, culture is the only outer expression of realization, protecting land, language, and jal is not separate from dharma. It is a duty in dharma. Meditation without cultural responsibility becomes escapism. Responsibility without meditation becomes stress. Gurudev dissolves this dichotomy: Kannada language, Anekal soil, local lakes. He blesses them all in the same breath because identity grounded in humility yet stretched toward universality is the goal. One first loves their roots, then the world becomes their family. VDS recognizes ecology and language preservation as yagya of society. In Rajotsava mantra, speaking about Kannada is timely. Rituals may invoke Agni, but lifestyle must preserve Jala. Sanskrit protects mantra, Kannada protects local memory. Both must breathe. He was reminding the villagers not to abandon identity in imitation of urban aspiration. A spiritual revolution must start from villages if it is to transform the world. For us, his emphasis legitimize our ongoing community temple seva and conservation activities. Now, explain the DVG Guttappa's idea of new shoots and old roots referenced by Gurudev. The philosophy symbolizes evolution without amnesia. New shoots represent innovation, science, inquiry. Roots represent wisdom, stability, values. Gurudev teaches you to learn AI and agriculture together, physics and pranayama together, coding and culture together. Because knowledge updates but wisdom upgrades. If roots are cut for new growth, the tree collapses. If new growth is rejected to protect roots, the stagnation follows. Various practices validate this blend. Ancient Homas meet modern organizations. Spirituality meets data driven research on yoga. Sanskrit chants meet Kannada folk literature like Mankuti Amma's Kag. This idea defines Sanatana Dharma timeless adaptability. Now, why did he specifically tell parents to teach children the Mankuti Man's Kag? Yeah, because it carries Vedanta in accessible Kannada, it nurtures ethics through joy, philosophy, and through simplicity, character through smile. It's a protective literature, spiritual and psychological armor. Yes, Kagga is like meditation in poetry. It gives life principles without dryness, intellect smiles, the heart absorbs. Now, how does laughter relate to Dharma according to Gurudev? The laughter is emotional detox. Gurudev says rage weakens while laughter strengthens. A calm mind laughs even at adversity. It is spontaneous spirituality. We call it manas homam without burnout. Laughter ignites positivity, not destruction. Now, what is the relevance of Basavana's teaching? They are ours. They are ours. Yeah, it is social non-duality. Tribe dissolves into collective responsibility. Art of Living courses operationalize this through seva culture and global satsangs. Now, he said courage is needed along with gentleness. Explain. There is a soft heart, strong spine. Meditation produces this balance. Rituals produce sankalpa strength. Meditation keeps anger from polluting it. Now, why must meditation be practiced from childhood? Because of neuroplasticity, emotional resilience, and increased creativity, early samskara alignment meditation grows the inner temples. Now, how do art of living and VDS together support such community uplift? We awaken the consciousness, we sustain tradition, the inner fire and the outer fire. Now, how do students benefit when exposed to Gurudev early? They learn peace as a skill, not a solution. Instead of reacting to problems emotionally, they respond intelligently. Gurudev conveys meditation, breathing, and human values to children in a format they immediately embody through experience, not preached. Students exposed to art of living techniques show improved focus, reduced impulsivity, and stronger emotional regulation. Indigni children felt seen, not instructed. That activates the confidence. Now, from VDS's lens, students also receive a civilizational identity boost when a guru stands near a neglected temple and adopts it. Children understand spirituality is not separate from service. They absorb that protecting culture is equal to protecting the self. It's foundational imprinting. Now, what did Gurudev mean when he said yoga isn't only for illness or old age? Neither he meant yoga is for excellence, not emergency. The breath work, stretches, asanas, and meditation expand human capability. The body becomes a tool, not a liability. When a practice begins early, talent accelerates naturally. Correct in videos, we see yoga as Nitya Abhyasa Yagya. It's a regular fire, not a rescue medicine. The daily rituals plus daily yoga sustain the life balance. Now, how did temple adoption at a school deliver a subtler societal message? Like the school is a future factory, a temple is a value forge. Uniting them conveys that education must stand on spiritual character. Exactly, adoption at a school passes temple heritage into the future, ensuring continuity. Now, how does pranayama cultivate patience and enthusiasm simultaneously? Yeah, the pranayama regulates the autonomic nervous system. Calm energy is patience. Uplifted energy is enthusiasm. Breath is the dial that adjusts both. For us, breath is the inner Agni. When balanced, the sankalpa becomes stable, smile becomes natural. Now, what is the connection between meditation research worldwide and Gurudev's mission? Gurudev globalized Kriya plus meditation not as belief, but as a science, research validates what practice reveals. His mission is to take experiential spirituality into evidence based acceptance without derooting the culture. Yes, that global research is a certification of Sanatana practicality. The Vedas rituals protect origin while science protects reach. Now, how does keeping Kannada alive relate to keeping humanity alive? There, the language carries emotion, memory, ethics, and interpersonal softness. Losing language means losing subtle hard communication. Kannada keeps local emotional intelligence alive, and Sanskrit protects the mantra intelligence. Both together preserve humanity plus spirituality. Now, define the ideal upbringing standard symbolized, yes, Jai Gurudev. Now, what role did the Prince Academy School play in preserving Sanatan culture while hosting a modern institution? Now, the Prince Academy is not merely a building of classrooms, it became a symbolic confluence. When Gurudev entered its premises, schools shape external intellect, temples shape internal culture by becoming the first educational space where a temple was spiritually adopted during a youth address. It transformed into a transmission point rather than a teaching point. Gurudev subtly declared that education must carry emotional depth, cultural identity, and spiritual calm, or else it becomes a soulless conveyor belt of certificates. The Prince Academy played the role of a prototype village institution that does not reject modernity but gives it Vedantic roots. Gurudev used the students as ambassadors of stewardship, not to worship the temple passively but to take responsibility actively. When a modern institution hosts an ancient resonance, students grow up not confused but enriched. The mind learns science, the heart learns belonging, and behavior learns dignity. That day, the school became a heritage archive without walls simply by listening. For Vedas, a school provided the necessary institutional legitimacy. Dharma is not fragile, it only becomes forgotten. When a temple adoption happens at a school, it sends a message. Children must transmit Dharma before they interpret it. Prince Academy demonstrated that rural culture can be mainstream, dignified, aspirational, and progressive without dissolving into westernization. By welcoming Gurudev in Kannada, coding vachanas, and invoking local identity pride, the school upheld Sanatan sustainability by local vocabulary. Preserving Kannada during a global talk conveyed that cultural strength is not opposition to global growth, but a prerequisite to carry it without collapse. Now, what does Gurudev's gesture of temple adoption teach about community leadership? The leadership in Dharma is never about position, it is about participation. Gurudev adopted the temple not by appointing himself, but by appointing the collective future, the students. He signaled that a true leader creates 10 more leaders, and the proof lies in how many hands continue to work when his hands retreat. For VDS, leadership is defined by four pillars: the Sankalpa or the resolve, the Seva or the selfless service, the Shastra or the authenticity, and Sadhana or the practice. Temple adoption embodies these pillars simultaneously. Renovating pillars of a temple is easier than renovating pillars of community resolve. Yet the latter happened first. His gesture validated that rural assets must remain under rural stewardship guided by spiritual responsibility. The Anekal Taluk leaders like Nagendraji attending the event were shown that the power must flow downward as empowerment, not upward as centralization. Temple flame must burn through many lamps, not one torch. Now, Art of Living emphasizes experiential leadership, the calm mind, clear communication, compassionate action, fearless accountability. Temple adoption displayed all these qualities without a long manifesto. Gurudev often says silence is the mother of good leadership, action is its child. When the silent guru picks up accountability for stone deities, it activates accountability in human leaders to pick up society's needs. The gesture demonstrated that leadership is love expressed as responsibility, not charisma expressed as applause. Community leadership succeeds when dignity, not anger, becomes motivational. Service, not ownership, becomes the aspiration. Unity, not personality cult, becomes the identity. Now, how can devotion like lotus feet sanctifying soil coexist with rational scientific inquiry? Devotion and inquiry are not binary, they are complementary modes of intelligence. Devotion is heart logic, inquiry is mind logic. Gurudev embodies non contradictory spirituality when prana can be researched, measured, applied, repeated, and also revered. The phrase lotus feet sanctifying soil is cultural vocabulary carrying an energetic acknowledgement that consciousness leaves a signature on geography through presence. Rational inquiry studies that signature through impact, behavioral change, stress reduction, calmness metrics, focus improvements. Science asks how, devotion asks why, spirituality answers both through experience. Now, in Vedic systems, Agni is ritual fire and also physical fire measured by science. Similarly, Prana is spiritual energy and also bioelectric, biomagnetic energy measurable via instrumentation. Gurudev bridges them by formatting devotion in cultural language by delivering meditation, pranayama, and ethics as a reproducible science. Soil was not sanctified because inquiry paused, but because inquiry gained purpose. This coexistence is the signature of modern Sanatan leadership. Now, what was the significance of greeting dignitaries like Nagendraji in the same breath as ordinary villagers? Jagadev, it dissolves hierarchy in spirituality while preserving hierarchy in responsibility. Status is acknowledged socially, but unity is acknowledged spiritually. Yes, the message is respect positions but belong to everyone. How does the Sanatan Dharma define new plus ancient together without becoming outdated or diluted? Jagadev Sanatan means the timeless adaptability, not changing roots, only updating expression. Dharma is evergreen when society is the gardener. Now, what emotional transmission happens when children take wisdom through stories instead of strict instruction? There, the story bypasses resistance, lands in emotion, becomes behavior. Smiling wisdom stays longer than memorized rules. Now, how did the Rajotsava add a deeper local relevance to a global spiritual talk? Yes, it made the culture the vehicle, not the barrier. Localization grounded universalization. Now, what vows did the students symbolically inherit when Gurudev adopted the temple near the school? Cleanliness, ritual continuity, community seva, cultural pride, and inner silence through daily breath and meditation. Now, how does the VDS ritual fire, the Agni Homa, and art of living inner fire, the breath and meditation together uplift rural society? Like the Agni purifies the space, the breath purifies the mind. Outer fire transforms environment, the inner fire transforms behavior. Now, why is transmitting values more important than debating them during childhood? Together, because behavior must sprout before opinions form, roots deepen when ego hasn't yet calcified. Now, what is the end goal when cultural literature like Kag and Vachanagalu are taught alongside meditation? It's a happy mind, a sharp intellect, and ethical behavior, a new generation that can chant mantra and also handle data. Now, how did the local leaders and elders interpret Gurudev's temple adoption differently from media narratives usually seen in cities? The elders saw continuity, not novelty. They saw responsibility, not philanthropy. How can the rural students become global citizens without losing local identity? By keeping language personal and wisdom universal, by carrying Sanskrit mantra in the heart and Kannada in conversation. Now, what difference does meditation make when the sankalpa or determination is cultivated? During the meditation removes the emotional volatility from resolve. It makes the promise strong without aggression. How are these principles reflected in art living programs specifically? Through breathwork or Kriya, the Seva culture, the value based storytelling, the Satsang unity and youth meditation camps, and through structured pujas, sumas, temple restorations, and the Agni based traditional integrity. Now, what is the key takeaway message for community governance when Gurudev attends a ritual institution and adopts a temple? Govern with culture, not ego. Lead with calm, not anger. Now, explain the phrase the anger weakens us. Is this emotional advice or strategic guidance? Both the anger drains the energy and cloud strategy. The rage protects nothing, determination protects everything. Now, how did the greeting they are ours reflect Karnataka civilization fabric during the address? It echoed the Basava Tattva unity culture. It operationalized through satsang without discrimination. Now, how does temple adoption become seed sowing for future generations rather than a conclusion? Jagrada, because he handed the responsibility to youth, not institutions. A temple adopted is a civilization activated, not just renovated. Now, if Gurudev could summarize this entire Jigni wisdom address into one sutra-like principle, what would it be? It would be local roots, global wings, the inner silence and the outer service, sankalpa in action, and smile in heart. This is the path, the ancient roots nourished by modern science, carried forward by children who meditate, serve, belong, and smile fearlessly. Now, what immediate responsibilities were assigned to students after the temple adoption? Neither when Gurudev adopted the temple near Prince Academy, responsibility wasn't verbally imposed, it was silently seated. We at the VDS ensured his intention translated into Karya, the continuity through student volunteerization. Students were encouraged to take four visible responsibilities: maintaining cleanliness around the temple, assisting elders during temple events, ensuring lamps, bells, and basic facilities were kept functional, and participating in cultural programs tied to the temple calendar. Importantly, Gurudev instructed that these actions should emerge from love, not force. So, our officers worked with school teachers to form a student seva mandal, a committee where leadership roles rotate to avoid personality attachment. It mirrors the Gurukul format where responsibility moves every month to a new student head, making service a skill, not a status. Students also take part in monthly Deepotsava preparations, draw rangolis, help organize satsangs, and monitor water usage in the temple, reflecting his emphasis on Jala Raksha Dharma. Adoption means continuity, not decoration. It means students learn to bow to history while walking into the future. By giving them tasks instead of donations, Gurudev created community trustees, not spectators. This is Dharma democratized at a youth scale. Now, along with these external tasks, the art of living introduced invisible internal responsibility, daily 5-minute breath plus 5 minutes silence practice before school, creating inner sanctity that sustains outer service. Responsibility backed by sustainability is a true adoption. Now, how does a temple adoption influence emotional ownership versus material ownership? Like the material ownership builds walls, emotional ownership builds bonds. When Gurudev adopts a temple, he shifts narrative from acquisition to affection. Emotional ownership means this place belongs in my heart, therefore I will protect it. Students began referring to the temple not as the adopted one, but our temple. This transition is crucial. It means that serve without expecting reward, participate without demanding credit, and protect without aggression. Emotional ownership activates the neurocognitive empathy circuits, studied scientifically as a pro-social impulse wiring. Gurudev's language was not managerial but experiential. Gratitude, feet touching, soil blessings, honoring Kannada, invoking the ancient roots. These are emotional permission slips telling the heart you are allowed to care, not only admire. Art of Living sees this bhava, advesh shift where reverence replaces rage, participation replaces protest, and belonging replaces bitterness. Emotionally owned temples don't degrade because millions silently serve them without claiming them. A heart that owns responsibility never abandons it, while material ownership ends when supervision ends. Now, VDS focuses on the ritual stewardship side. Material ownership means managing funds and structure, but emotional ownership means sustaining ritual life. Adoption changed not signboards but participation patterns. Temple now breathes because hearts moved in, not wallets moved in. Now, why are temples powerful psychosocial centers in villages? A village temple is a psychosocial lighthouse. In cities, identity is distributed across many institutions, but in villages, identity is integrated into one central spiritual heart. When a temple thrives, it generates five community outcomes: the belonging, conflict resolution, cultural memory, emotional catharsis, and collective celebration. The Ingalwadi and Jigni are archetypal examples where the temple encodes the emotional law even when civic law is distant. Rituals teach timing, the festivals teach patience, collective prayer teaches equality, satsang teaches harmony without negotiation. The VDS recognizes these effects as samadhik samskar generation mechanisms. A temple is a public parliament of silence. People can disagree socially, but when the arati starts, everyone synchronizes. That synchronization is its psychology. Children learn social cues there earlier than in classrooms. When Gurudev revived the adoption flame, students saw the temple as anxiety free congregation space where emotion transforms into smile before stress becomes trauma. Now, Art of Living adds that meditation integrates these effects by reducing internal conflict, making temple seva emotionally nourishing, not draining. Now, how do the Vachana Galu teachings prevent aggression while building strength? The Vachana Galu carry sharp wisdom formatted softly. They give resolve without rage. Courageful humility is Karnataka's armor. Now, what were the subtle signs of energetic field uplift? When Gurudev placed his feet symbolically on unequal soil, there the people fell silent without being asked. The eyes teared, the smile softened, the breath deepened naturally. That is the signature of coherence. Anikal became a resonant memory, not just a coordinate. Now, how does merging meditation with education impact talent? Breathwork boosts creativity, silence boosts the problem solving, calmness boosts the communication, then education builds brilliance, not burnout. Now, how did Gurudev's presence validate the rural cultural pride in a dignified way? By letting Kannada welcome a global guru, he legitimized the local pride as strength, not inferiority. The rural culture became aspirational again. Now, how does Seva shape identity differently from academics? Academic shapes ability, the Seva shapes the accountability. Ability needs root, accountability gives fruit. Now, why did he emphasize not using English unnecessarily in villages? Because imitation dissolves the identity, confidence grows from mother tongue first. Local language tunes emotional intelligence better than borrowed language. How does the determination differ from stubbornness? Jagadiv, stubbornness is ego driven, determination is value driven, meditation removes the ego from resolve. Now, how does the Rajotsava month add a deeper layer of Dharma Raksha message? Rajotsava celebrates the language, Dharma protects civilization through language memory, it anchors the promises in local calendar relevance. Now, how do you operationalize these vows in the VDS program? Through monthly homas, temple seva committees, the lamp and puja sport, and Sanskrit and Kannada teachings, water conservation pledge integration, and inner sustainability through breathing, meditation before seva activities. Now, what does Gurudev mean by meditate first, act next? He means a response over reaction, sankalpa over snap emotion. Now, how do children who meditate behave differently in community service? They serve joyfully, not irritably. Fatigue becomes slower, gratitude becomes faster. They understand traditions' relevance without debate. Now, how is Sudarshan Kriya adapted for youth in such school settings? There have been micro sessions of breathwork, guided relaxation, rhythmic breathing prototypes, value storytelling, silence capsules, and followed by a cultural seva task to imprint outward accountability. Now, how does the Agnihoma energy differ from meditation energy, and why is both needed? The Agni purifies outside, the breath purifies the inside. Outside sanctity plus inside serenity results in complete transformation. Now, how did the adopted temple become an educational model rather than charity narrative? Because he gave responsibility, not reward. Education absorbed history, history empowered students. Now, how do you maintain momentum months after such visits? Through committees, rotations, monthly rituals, student leadership cycles, maintenance schedules, community volunteers, columned by school calendar, through daily practice habits, not only day inspiration, not one day inspiration. Now, what is the link between meditation, resilience, and dharma protection? The resilience protects the mind from collapse into anger. Dharma protection protects civilization from collapse into forgetfulness. The calm resilience, stable seva, and sustainable dharma continuity. Now, if this address was a seed mantra, what mantra would represent it? Roots strong, smile long, the Sankalpa form and the Seva warm. This is Sanatana Dharma in motion, the newity in knowledge, antiquity in wisdom, unity in Seva, and calmness in mind, courage in spine, Kannada in conversation, Sanskrit in mantra, and meditation in daily life. Now, how did Gurudev's arrival impact the spiritual identity of Anikal soil according to villagers? Later, when Gurudev, his whole and Sri Sri Ravi Shankarji stepped onto the grounds of Prince Academy School in Jigni village, the event transcended geography and entered collective consciousness in rural spiritual psychology. Sacredness is not an awarded title but an experienced occurrence. The speaker's words, he made this anikal soil sacred by placing the lotus feet of his feet upon it, reflect a deeper truth recognized in Art of Living as a prana impregnation of space through awakened consciousness. Soil becomes sacred when human consciousness touches it with reverence, responsibility, and awareness. Gurudev's presence activates a phenomenon we often observe. People suddenly perceive their homeland not as backward rural land but as spiritually empowered cultural soil. Students stood calmer, elders stood prouder, and teachers stood more inspired. not because anything outside changed instantly, but because the inner narrative shifted. The phrase lotus feet is emotional language encoding energetic acknowledgement. It tells the community that their land is worthy of reverence, care, and continuity. Gurudev's arrival always creates a cultural reset. Local identity becomes strong, not defensive. Devotion becomes responsible, not fragile. And spirituality becomes actionable, not escapist. That day, the villager did not just welcome a spiritual master, it welcomed a civilizational mirror, reminding them that their land carries spiritual inheritance for children. It became a subtle samskara stamp. Sacredness means protecting what is ours, not abandoning it for what looks new. Gurudev showed that divinity does not rename the land, it empowers the land to remember itself. His walk on the soil was not symbolic charity, but symbolic inheritance. Transfers in villages, people measure blessings not by outcomes immediately counted, but transformation silently witnessed. Anikal soil transformed from a location into a memory, a promise, a responsibility, and a quiet celebration carried forward in breath and seva rather than loud slogans alone. Now, in Vedic Dharma, the sacred soil is recognized through continuity of respect, ritual responsibility, and community participation. Adoption means preservation, not possession. Gurudev legitimized the rural Dharma stewardship by empowering the youth to inherit and sustain it. Now, how does the spiritual adoption of a temple differ from administrative or financial adoption? The temple adoption in Vedic understanding is primarily an energetic and societal covenant. Administrative adoption can manage funds, hire priests, restore culture and structure, or put signboards. But spiritual adoption means sustaining the flame when supervision leaves. When Gurudev adopted the temple near Prince Academy School, he was not taking charge. He was awakening charge in others. For Vedic Simpsons, and adoption always means ritual continuity, cleanliness, faith restoration, cultural metabolism revival, and ceremonial participation by community trustees, not external sponsors alone. A village temple is not a museum of spirituality, it is a center for living samskaras, the arti, the lamp lighting, the prayer, the festival timings, the service training, the interpersonal unity, and emotional detox through collective devotion. When a spiritual leader adopts a temple, the adoption is successful only when ownership is transferred emotionally into the villagers, especially children. Gurudev ensured students not only respect the temple surroundings but serve it through love driven responsibility, helping elders, maintaining temple surroundings, monitoring water usage, lighting lamps, participating in folk wisdom programs, and assisting in monthly seva activities. This prevents dharma erosion that happens when culture is left to institutions but not individuals. Adoption of temple by a guru means shifting ego of leadership into seva of leadership. Instead of saying, I built it, students now say it lives in us. This is essential to protect Dharma from future apathy. The speaker's acknowledgement in Kannada before the address ensured local cultural backbone remained firm. Financial or administrative adoption ends when funds stop, paperwork ends, or sponsorship cycles move. But spiritual adoption endures because rituals embed timing, seva embeds responsibility, stories embed identity, and meditation embeds emotional sustainability. For VDS, temple adoption means Agni outside plus Sankalpa inside, plus seva in community, plus culture in children, plus continuity in ritual. Now, Art of Living adds that spiritual adoption awakens the inner temples in students through silence, breathwork, meditation, patience, and enthusiasm. Responsibility backed by inner resilience makes adoption sustainable rather than seasonal inspiration. Now, why was Kannada prioritized in the welcome speech even before a global spiritual figure addressed the audience? Yeah, the language carries the emotional operating system. In villages, Kannada is not just a medium, it is belonging expressed as sound. Gurudev intentionally allowed a cultural pride to be the stage and not the obstacle. Samskara grows stronger when delivered in mother tongue. The Kannada preserved self worth before spirituality universalized the message. Now, explain the message and the relevance of D.V.G. Gundapas's philosophy of new shoots and old roots in today's youth education. The quote encapsulates evolution without identity rupture. Knowledge refreshes like shoots. Wisdom deepens like roots. The Sanatan Dharma retains the modern because expression updates, but foundation stays anchored, especially through local cultural literature. Now, why did Gurudev ask parents and teachers to teach the Mankutimma's Kag even if it is not part of curriculum? The Kag contains Vedanta, ethics, life principles in joyful lyrical Kannada format. Curriculum informs the Kag transforms behavior. Yes, his approach validates that wisdom must teach children through joy, smile, narration, not obligation. Now, how does laughter become dharma and also a noble duty according to Gurudev? Jagadev, the raga drains the prana, laughter restores the prana. Laughing is natural dharma, spreading laughter is a social dharma. The strength achieved through smile is sustainable. Anger burns energy, the laughter recycles energy. How does Basamana's teaching they are ours align with rural development and temple adoption? It eliminates the social fragmentation. Temple becomes collective asset when society begins seeing everyone as part of one circle of responsibility. Art of living translates this unity into seva, not speech driven validation alone. Now, Gurudev said courage must exist with gentleness. How is this cultivated? Soft heart, strong spine, meditation conditions resolve without heat or rage. True courage protects dharmic continuity, anger protects ego, not assets. Now, what benefits emerge when yoga and meditation are practiced from childhood instead of adulthood? Cognitive talent grows faster, patience deeper, and emotional collapse lesser. Enthusiasm stronger, and a ritual in childhood becomes the Nitya Samskara, not emergency prescription. Now, how do water, land, and language preservation become dharmic duty instead of social slogans? The duty in dharma protects resources from extinction. Slogans only postpone responsibility. Meditation plus pledge makes duty self-driven, not externally imposed. Now, how did greeting dignitaries like Nagendraji emotionally influence the community harmony at the event? Respect dissolves resistance. Mentoring and mentioning dear ones with devotion creates unity threshold in the heart field. Position is respected socially, no unity spiritually. Both are important. Now, what psychological shift happens when folk wisdom and vachana glue are taught joyfully rather than strictly? They land in emotion, bypass resistance, becomes behavior before belief crystallizes. Smiling wisdom lasts longer than memorized ethics. Now, how does meditation transmute anger into determination, as Gurudev emphasized? The anger is directionless fire, determination is channel fire. Meditation calibrates that channel. The ritual Agni outside, breath Agni inside prevents rage from becoming identity. Now, why are rural temples cultural memory banks for children? The children learn celebration, timing, unity, and ethics in temples before textbooks name it as culture. Meditation complements this by detoxing anxiety, impatience, and impulsivity. Now, what message does temple adoption send about future stewardship? Responsibility over reward, stewardship over sponsorship, continuity over credit, and seva over possession. Now, how does the Sanatan blend of ancient culture plus new science empower children practically? It gives confidence that the new world is also ours to handle without discarding the old world that shaped us. Modernity gives tools, the Sanatan gives purpose, meditation gives the emotional stability to hold both. How does protecting Kannada language indirectly protect emotional intelligence according to Art of Living Understanding? Kannada preserves soft interpersonal dharmic cues, courtesy, empathy, belonging, humility, and smile. Sanskrit protects the mantra cues, Kannada protects the human cues. Both protect the humanity. Now, what signs showed that children already practicing yoga meditation benefited most from Gurudev's advice? They listed with silence, not restlessness, enthusiasm without impatience, smile without distraction. This behavior reflected embodied knowledge, not intellectual negotiation. How do you sustain inspiration months after such guru visits? Through seva mandals, lamp maintenance cycles, festival participation, student rotation leadership, and ritual timing or continuity. Through daily breath and silence capsules, grounding inspiration into habit, not flash memory. Now, if this wisdom address was condensed into one leadership formula, what would it be? Root yourself in culture, rise in knowledge, breathe in silence, serve in action, smile through storms, Agni outside, the calmness inside, Kannada in voice, Dharma in courage, Seva in hands. This is Sanatan stewardship, not passive worship, not a violent revolt, but fearless smiling continuity carried forward by children who belong, meditate, preserve, and serve. Now, how did the emphasis on Kannada during the event strengthen the local cultural confidence? The language is the vessel of thought, emotion, and identity. By choosing Kannada, Gurudev communicated that spiritual universality doesn't require cultural compromise. It reassured villagers that modern knowledge can coexist with local pride. Children absorb the implicit message your mother tongue is a key to understanding yourself and your environment. Emotional circuits are linked to familiarity, the sound, rhythm, storytelling are activated in mother tongue, enhancing comprehension of ethical principles, meditation instructions, and moral narratives. When children hear Vedantic wisdom or practical life principles in Kannada, it bypasses intellectual resistance and lands directly into heart and behavior. Now, from a Vedic perspective, language is a sacred conduit for culture. Sanskrit preserves rituals, Kannada preserves community identity. When Gurudev spoke in Kannada, he reinforced the emotional ownership of Dharma. Students internalize that they are custodians of their land and culture. It also builds confidence among elders who often feel like cultural marginalization. When global languages dominate, local identity, once strengthened, becomes a resilient base for enhancing modernity, meditation, and yoga. The approach models how cultural preservation and global learning are complementary, not contradictory. Now, how does teaching folk tales like Makutimmas Kaga develop moral intelligence? Jagrudev, folk tales simplify complex life principles, embedding them in stories children can relate to and remember. The Kag integrates Vedantic values, ethics, and practical decision making into narrative form. It teaches generosity, courage, and joy and humor without formal instruction. Children internalize lessons organically. Their moral intelligence grows through empathy and observation rather than rule enforcement. The Vidya's perspective aligns a folk wisdom bridges a rural ritual knowledge and practical life application. When children help elders in temple rituals while recalling Kak, the ethical lesson becomes embodied. They develop a sense of community responsibility, linking emotional intelligence with the cultural continuity. Now, why did Gurudev stress the balance of courage and gentleness? The Gurudev ensures action, gentleness ensures compassion. Meditation teaches children to act decisively without ego or aggression. Anger, by contrast, diminishes clarity and energy. From a ritual perspective, gentleness is dharma, courage is sustenance. Together, they form the backbone of moral and social stability. Now, how do the early yoga and meditation practices increase patience and enthusiasm? Jagurudev, children develop the self-regulation, focused attention, and emotional resilience. Breath-based exercises like pranayama activate the calm neural pathways, allowing patience to arise naturally. Patience enables ritual fidelity. Enthusiasm ensures active participation in temple duties and community service. Together, they sustain dharmic values beyond instruction. Now, how does the Rajotsava context reinforce Gurudev's message on land, language, and water preservation? There, the Rajotsava celebrates the Karnataka's heritage, connecting it with spiritual responsibility, transforms pride into active stewardship. Children learn that culture is lived daily, language, water, and soil preservation are dharmic acts, not civic chores. Now, how did Gurudev link laughter with dharma? Negative laughter rejuvenates prana, reduces stress, and strengthens social bonds. Making others laugh becomes a noble duty, a practice of joy as spiritual service. The temples and community events gain vitality through joyful participation, reinforcing dharma as inclusive, not burdensome. Now, what is the significance of the DRR's teaching in community building? It fosters empathy, unity, and inclusivity in temple and school. Everyone becomes a stakeholder, no one is marginalized. It encourages proactive service and social harmony, embedding ethical values in daily life. Now, how does meditation help children transform anger into determination? The meditation provides a neural space to observe impulses. Anger diminishes, resolve, and clarity strengthen. Determined action guided by dharma ensures sustainable community service, temple upkeep, and cultural continuity. How did the temple adoption inspire children to take ownership of cultural heritage? It shifted perspective from passive admiration to active stewardship. Children now see rituals, cleanliness, and festivals as personal responsibility. Now, simultaneously, meditation and yoga instilled the inner discipline, making outer service sustainable and joyful. How does blending modern science with traditional culture strengthen the Sanatan philosophy? Yet the science validates and amplifies the traditional practices. Research on yoga and meditation makes the ancient wisdom reproducible and credible while retaining the cultural essence. Modern tools for ritual measurement, timing, and health optimization integrate seamlessly with age old dharmic practices, ensuring continuity and relevance. Now, how do the Vachana Galu and modern poetry contribute to character formation? They teach the moral values, humor, resilience, and social responsibility, naturally engaging both heart and intellect. They provide emotional scaffolding for ritual practice and community engagement, anchoring children in dharma. How does teaching culture through joy differ from teaching it through obligation? Negative joy engages attention and memory, obligation breeds resistance. Children internalize values faster when learning is experiential. Obligation may maintain a decorum, but joy ensures long term commitment and cultural continuity. Now, what is the role of community elders in sustaining temple adoption lessons? Elders model dharmic participation, mentor students, and preserve oral traditions. Their presence ensures knowledge transfer across generations. They act as living anchors. Meditation and yoga enable children to connect respect with internal calm, not fear or compulsion. Now, how does the early practice of pranayama influence leadership skills? Breath control enhances emotional regulation, attention, and decision making, foundational for ethical and effective leadership. Combined with ritual responsibilities, students learn service oriented leadership rather than hierarchical command. Now, how did Gurudev integrate the folk wisdom with the spiritual teaching for practical life guidance? Stories like Kaga translate Vedantic principles into daily ethics and joy. Children learn humility, courage, and service without abstract lectures. They provide actionable guidance, timely rituals, and community respect, and environmental consciousness rooted in living dharma. How does meditation sustain enthusiasm for seva and temple upkeep? It generates the inner satisfaction, preventing burnout. Action becomes meditation in motion rather than labor. Sustained participation ensures that rituals, festivals, and temple care remain continuous, preserving the dharmic energy. How are laughter, courage, and gentleness interrelated in dharmic living? Laughter replenishes energy, gentleness directs empathy, courage drives ethical action. Together, they form the emotional triad for balanced living. This triad ensures children maintain respect, bravery, and emotional intelligence in temple and community life. Now, how does teaching children in their mother tongue influence meditation practice? Instructions in Kannada anchor mental clarity and emotional resonance, making meditation more natural and intuitive. It aligns the inner practice with the cultural identity, reinforcing the dharmic ownership. How do local festivals integrate modern mindfulness techniques without losing authenticity? Simple mindfulness pauses during rituals, controlled breathing, and gratitude reflection complement festivals, enhancing awareness without diluting culture. Vedic rituals continue as designed. Mindfulness adds subtle focus, preventing distraction and sustaining engagement. How does the temple adoption model generational continuity in Dharma? It transfers the responsibility to youth, reinforced by meditation, yoga, and folk wisdom. Outer service mirrors the inner discipline. Generational continuity occurs when children inherit not objects, but values, rituals, responsibility, and pride, ensuring dharma endures beyond one visit. How does the integration of modernity with ancient culture create a balanced development in children? Gurudev emphasized that modern knowledge and ancient wisdom are complementary, not contradictory. Modernity equips children with tools, skills, and rational perspectives. Ancient culture grounds them with ethics, emotional intelligence, and spiritual stability. When these two merge, children learn to navigate the complexities of life with discernment and courage. Meditation and yoga, as recommended by Gurudev, function as bridges between these worlds. For instance, while children may study technology or science, practicing pranayama or mindful silence enhances concentration, patience, and creativity. They learn to apply modern skills without losing moral and cultural bearings. This process nurtures holistic development, intellect, character, emotional maturity, and advance simultaneously. Now, from the Vedic Dharma standpoint, balance is essential for cultural continuity. Ancient rituals, folk tales, and temple activities teach values and community cohesion, while scientific modernity ensures efficiency and problem solving skills by encouraging children to respect local traditions such as Mankuti Masa, Kag, or local temple seva alongside exposure to scientific reasoning. Gurudev cultivates individuals capable of ethical innovation who neither abandon their roots nor fear progress. This approach strengthens community identity and resilience. Now, why did Gurudev stress teaching children both courage and laughter simultaneously? Laughter develops resilience and social intelligence. Courage develops moral and ethical strength. Together, they prevent rigidity or fear. Meditation reinforces this balance. Children learn to face challenges firmly without aggression and maintain joy despite difficulties. In Vedic practices, the temples cultivate both qualities courage to maintain dharmic duties and joy in seva. Combined, they produce leaders who act decisively while remaining compassionate. Now, how do meditation and yoga enhance the teaching of life values in rural schools? Meditation cultivates self awareness, yoga enhances discipline and energy management. When children practice these early lessons in honesty, patience, humility, and empathy, move from theory to embodiment. Temple rituals and community participation become platforms to apply these values, practically ensuring internalization of dharma alongside the actual action. How did the temple adoption promotion environmental consciousness among students? Students were assigned duties like maintaining cleanliness, conserving water, and caring for plants around the temple. This hands on responsibility connected spiritual respect with ecological awareness. Yoga and meditation amplify this connection internally. Mindful attention to surroundings fosters a sense of sacredness in natural resources, ensuring sustainable habits. Now, how do folk tales and Vachanagalu foster ethical judgment in children? Through relatable narratives, children learn consequences of actions, importance of kindness, and courage in adversity. Humor within folk tales ensures absorption without pressure. When combined with seva in temple activities, these lessons are shifted from cognitive understanding to practical ethical action, reinforcing community in dharma. Now, how does the early exposure to meditation affect emotional regulation in rural students? Meditation develops the neural pathways for calmness, reducing impulsive anger, frustration, and stress. Students naturally respond to challenges with clarity and composure. In the community settings like temple rituals or group festivals, children demonstrate patience, cooperation, and respectful participation, illustrating emotional maturity. Now, how does teaching culture through local language affect the long term identity formation? Mother tongue instruction strengthens self esteem, cultural memory, and moral reasoning. Children internalize values and local wisdom in a natural, intuitive manner. For temple adoption, this means children feel ownership, responsibility, and pride in rituals, festivals, and seva practices, ensuring generational continuity. Now, how does blending folk wisdom with meditation create holistic learning? Folk wisdom delivers moral concepts, meditation instills experiential understanding. Children not only know ethical principles but feel them in body and mind, enhancing holistic development. Temple activities serve as a practical laboratory where lessons are enacted, bridging story, ritual, and mindfulness into sustainable learning. Now, how do festivals and temple rituals nurture social cohesion among children? Participation teaches collaboration, respect for hierarchy, timing, and collective joy. Children experience equality, inclusion, and responsibility firsthand. Meditation and mindfulness enhance focus and empathy during these events, allowing children to internalize the communal and dharmic principles being celebrated. Now, how does Gurudev's approach inspire children to become responsible custodians of heritage? By linking a spiritual experience, meditation, folk wisdom, and practical responsibility, Gurudev empowers children to see themselves as active preservers of Dharma. They learn to protect, nurture, and transmit cultural and spiritual heritage consciously. Temple adoption concretizes this vision. Children carry both emotional ownership and ritual duty, ensuring that culture, values, and dharmic practices remain alive across generations. Their seva is not obligation but joyful inheritance, demonstrating the model of sustainable dharma stewardship. Now, how does teaching children about soil, water, and land preservation integrate spirituality with environmental responsibility? Gurudev realized and emphasized that true spirituality is inseparable from ecological awareness. By teaching children to respect soil, conserve water, and honor the land, we help them see divinity in everyday life. Yoga and meditation amplify this perspective. Mindful breathing and attention develop an inner sensitivity that naturally extends to the environment. Children begin to feel connected to the land they inhabit, understanding that protecting natural resources is not merely civic duty but a dharmic responsibility. When spiritual leaders like Gurudev frame ecological stewardship as sacred, children absorb the message at the emotional, behavioral, and cognitive levels. In effect, care for the environment becomes an extension of self awareness and compassion. Now, from a Vedic perspective, the soil, water, and land are carriers of dharmic energy. By linking temple adoption with ecological responsibility, children not only maintain ritual spaces but also internalize the principle of karma yoga, action with mindfulness and moral alignment. Practices like cleaning temple premises, planting trees, and ensuring water conservation teach them that their actions have lasting impact, fostering a sense of guardianship that extends beyond rituals into the community and broader environment. Now, how does meditation support the development of courage in children? Meditation cultivates the inner stability, reducing fear and impulsive reactions. Courage is not aggression, it is clarity, resilience, and the ability to act rightly under pressure. When children practice meditation regularly, they learn to approach challenges calmly, make thoughtful decisions, and act ethically without being dominated by anger or fear. In the temple context, courage translates into maintaining dharmic responsibilities. Even when it is challenging, meditation ensures that children develop the inner backbone to perform seva, uphold traditions, and face moral dilemmas with clarity. Now, why is joy considered a spiritual practice in Gurudev's teachings? The Gurudev teaches that laughter replenishes prana, reduces stress, and strengthens the bonds. Joyful expression becomes dharma when it is inclusive and enhances others' well being. Meditation and breathing practices maintain the internal calm necessary for sustained joy. The temple rituals, the folk songs, and community festivals demonstrate that joy strengthens participation and engagement. A cheerful community is a resilient, spiritually vibrant community aligned with the dharmic values. Now, how does the early engagement with folk tales like Kagga shape ethical reasoning? The stories embed values in emotional memory, allowing children to intuitively understand right and wrong. The lessons of kindness, courage, and empathy become lived experiences rather than abstract concepts. Integrating these stories with temple duties reinforces application. Children act on the lessons, creating behavioral continuity between narrative, ritual, and daily life. Now, how do the communal rituals enhance social intelligence in children? Participation in temple rituals and festivals teach respect, timing, collaboration, and inclusivity. Children develop empathy, teamwork, and conflict resolution skills. Mindfulness and meditation amplify attention and emotional regulation, ensuring social learning and translates into long lasting behavioral patterns. How does teaching mother tongue meditation instructions impact spiritual growth? Instructions in Kannada ensure clarity, emotional resonance, and deeper internalization. Children relate practices to familiar concepts, enhancing retention and application. This approach strengthens cultural identity while aligning the inner practice with community values and rituals supporting the dharmic continuity. How do courage, gentleness, and laughter together foster holistic leadership? Laughter replenishes energy, gentleness fosters empathy, courage drives ethical action. Together, these qualities create balance, effective leaders rooted in morality. Now, temple adoption exercises allow children to practice these qualities in service, ensuring leadership is community oriented and values based rather than ego driven. How does adopting a temple influence the long term community cohesion? Temple adoption transforms spaces into living centers of culture, morality, and service. Children on accountability, elders mentor, and families participate collectively, building social cohesion. Meditation and yoga support sustained engagement, ensuring that the relationship between community members remains harmonious, mindful, and spiritually aligned. Now, how do the rituals and folk stories together create resilient cultural identity? Rituals embed structure while folk stories embed meaning. When children experience both, they develop a living cultural memory, a resilience that survives modernization. Temple activities reinforce behavioral application. Caring for rituals, observing festivals, and reciting stories integrate ethics, devotion, and social responsibility into identity. Now, what is the ultimate lesson for children from Gurudev's visit and temple adoption? Jayadev, children learn responsible guardianship of culture, heritage, and environment. Meditation, yoga, folk wisdom, and seva create individuals capable of ethical decision making, compassion, and leadership. They inherit the principle that dharma is action with awareness, joy, and continuity. Temple adoption and Gurudev's teachings together instill values that will ripple across generations, ensuring culture, spirituality, and ethics remain vibrant. Jai Gurudev.